And we are back. So hopefully that was enlightening. I don't know.
It was something.
The RuPaul's Drag Race? Oh, that was great. All of it was amazing.
It was wonderful.
So I have a couple of questions here for Tiana, and especially about working here in New Haven as an entertainer. And so we are going to start there. So number one, what got you into being an entertainer here in, well, really an entertainer, period. And then how did you end up here in New Haven?
I stumbled upon a show in New York City when I was like 17. I think I was 17. I shouldn't have been at the show, so I will not name where I was. I don't want anybody to get in trouble. But I stumbled upon a show and somebody asked me to be their daughter. And I said, sure. And next thing you know, I was on a stage. It's been 8 years and it just keeps on happening.
And then how did you end up here in New Haven?
I went to the University of New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
And since college is expensive...
What?
And these books don't pay for themselves, I decided to start entertaining here in New Haven. And I started at Partners Cafe on a Halloween show, and then they asked me to come back.
So Partners, for those of you who are not from this area, Partners is like a really good bar, and it's been here for my tenure.
It's one of the oldest. It's been there. I should know how long because I've worked there for so long, but
I think at least since I want to say the 80s, and I'm gonna
I want to say even before the 80s, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's been there for a long time. And that's where I started performing in New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm everywhere in Connecticut.
Yes. And
I can't find a home. I'm the orphan performer.
I mean, I know that you've done like RuPaul's Drag Race shows before. So how we recap, she would actually like
watch the show
with people and
comment on it and all that stuff. And now everybody does it.
So like we do afterwards, but live. So
yes, I was live commentary.
Yeah,
commentary.
Yeah. So
commentating is not a word because it's commenting. Oof. Shoot me in the head for saying commentating.
There is a commentator.
Yeah, but you can't commentate because a commentator
is just comments. Commenting. I got it. It's like when people are what is that word?
I could care less.
Couldn't. If you could care less.
Supposedly. I could go on for days and days and days.
Piscetti.
Oh.
Pacific Espresso.
Strawberries.
What?
You never heard somebody say strawberry?
No. Or
it's life-changing.
I'm drawing with a crayon. Didn't know there was no on that word.
How do other people say crayons? Like I think
crayon.
Oh.
I say crayon too, and I'm like, where?
When people call soda pop.
Come on, where are you from? Canada?
Buffalo, New York. They say pop.
I lived in Georgia for a lot of my youth, and it's just Coke.
Yeah, everything's a Coke. No, see, I'm okay.
What kind of Coke do you want?
I'm okay with that, but pop, I'm not okay with pop.
Pop is weird, because to me, pop is a song that came out in 2002.
No, that's Dirty Pop.
Pop Pop, you can't stop.
I love that song. And Sync, come back.
So where has been your favorite place to perform? Either in Connecticut.
My favorite place to perform is in my shower. That's where the real magic happens.
There it is, folks.
No, in terms of clubs, I just like going wherever people appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of places don't appreciate good entertainment like they used to or like they do in other regions of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So in Connecticut, when I find somewhere that I'm appreciated,
yeah,
I'm fine.
Well, so last week we had a DJ on, and I think it's good for me to get into the habit of asking how people start out, and the reason why is because I know that especially later on, probably there might be people who are listening who are younger and are like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and so
call me because I still don't know.
And so I asked the questions like, how do you get started and things like that, because I find that a lot of younger people, including myself, like, girl, I started a podcast 2 weeks ago, like that I've been wanting to start.
Weeks?
Yeah, but
number 3.
You're number 3.
Wow, I feel really, really, really important. I don't know why I thought you've been doing this for a long time.
Because I originally thought about starting it 2 years ago.
Did you ask me 2 years ago?
Uh-huh, I did.
Look at you following through.
Yeah, I was like, hey, did you want to do this?
I really thought you've been doing this. I told somebody for like 2 years. I remember you had brought the... Wow.
Yeah, so...
The more you know.
Yeah, what really happened was I buckled down and, got a hold of my life and got a therapist.
Jesus is still taking my wheel, so
yeah.
I'm still spinning out of control.
Hedwig's in the back closing his eyes.
No, Hedwig's outside the car going, I don't even want to be there.
So my next question would be, who is your, idol? Who do you want to embody someone, one, and two, if you do, who is that person?
No, my as an entertainer, my idol would probably be she is my drag auntie. She doesn't do drag anymore, but I try to be as good as I always thought she was when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Blanca Yvette. You can still find her on Facebook. I won't say was because she's still alive. She is sickening. She doesn't perform anymore, but she is sickening, and she's honestly one of the best entertainers I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So now when I entertain, I try to take her and say what would Blanca have done. And then there's a lot of honorable mentions like my drag mother Natasha Rose, Halo Carrera. My drag children, the House of Maxim, they're all perfect.
Shout out to the House of Maxim.
Karen Josephine, I try to think, what would they want me to do? Because they're the ones that keep me, honestly, they're the ones that keep me going, because if they weren't there, I wouldn't keep doing this stuff anymore.
I mean, I feel that, especially when you, there are things that I started out doing, and then when I dropped it, there were only a couple of people who came back in my life and they're like, hey, what were you doing with that?
No, it's definitely very draining, especially for somebody like me. Believe it or not, I am very introverted. And
I actually do know that about you.
Yes, yeah. I was going to say, you've known me long enough to know that. But I'm actually very introverted. So to be this giant extrovert and standing on a stage in front of X amount of people and sometimes wearing very minimal clothing, you have to... It takes a lot out of you mentally because it's it's almost like acting, but it's a constant character, and it definitely takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
More on your mind than anything else, because my body looks great still. Just saying. You can look at it. Look at it on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. My body looks amazing. But mentally...
She snatched.
Mentally, not so much.
I know exactly where you're coming from. You guys weren't able to hear our talk during the break while we were taking pictures. But she actually brought up that a lot of people used to call me Day, and so Day was actually that was my going out name,
your alter ego.
And yeah, it was
Sasha Fierce, if you will.
Yeah, because it's I am still an introvert, and I need a lot of time to myself, and I ignored that for a long time.
I need a lot of alcohol.
You and me both. Because I kept telling myself this is who I need to be, and really the answer is no. You need to be who.
You need to be sane. You don't want to. Yeah. You need to be healthy.
You need to be there for yourself first.
And nobody else is gonna be.
Yeah. So I'm getting better at meeting myself in the middle,
which is the hardest part.
Oh yeah. Therapy's great for that.
Shout out to my therapist.
So
I have one too.
I don't know.
She's awesome.
4 years going. She forgot our appointment this week. We've been getting together so long. She's like, "Oh, we had brunch."
She's like, "Oh, we did have brunch, didn't we?"
So you have some shows coming up?
Yes, I have one. At Partners Cafe, it's the underwear party on April 20th with Sylvia Hart and Wait du Soleil. The flyer's hysterical. Please go online and look at it.
I have been to an underwear party in the past.
Oh.
I've lost weight since then.
Oh, so are you going to enter the contest? Because I'm sure I'm going to have to snatch somebody. And then I'm at Western Connecticut State University in April. I don't have my little cheat sheet in front of me, so I don't know the date. But I'm at Western Connecticut State University with Barbara Jones, Street Stan, Summer Orlando, Sylvia Hart again. And there is a guest student performer who I don't know who it is. But come out to that.
It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah. College shows are always a lot of fun. because college kids are not as they don't see drag as much as people do at clubs. So to them, it's all new, it's exciting, and it's like their favorite team wins the Super Bowl or the World Series or what is the NCAA? Or they made it to the Final Four.
March Madness?
Yes, March Madness. It's like that all the time.
What we're in right now. So I actually got to see, that's how I saw Shangela perform for the first time, was at Amherst College.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she's
So her and Gia Gunn were actually, they were doing this weird, like, cross-country tour, and...
yeah, and I think Laganja and Alyssa were part of the bigger tour.
But they were, but it was just because the college could only afford...
Two of them, yeah. I remember that.
And so, but they were performing in Boston the next night, so a lot of the people who were in the GSA for Amherst College were like, oh, well, we're going to do this tonight, and then we're all going to travel as a group and go see them in Boston the next day.
I wish I had friends that did something
But I... and I was one of the only non-Amherst College students sitting in the crowd. Of course.
There has to be one. There's always one.
Oh, yeah. And so Shangela is like murdering. She's killing the stage and wearing the best outfits, and no one has tipped her a single dollar because it's a college and they don't know what to do. And so be aware of this and possibly expect that.
And you usually have to donate your tips.
I mean...
But they pay me.
Well, they paid Shangela.
So they paid me. So, I mean, as long as they leave with that, don't tip me. It's fine.
So,
just watch and learn.
Yeah, so, but I was working for like $200 a week at Starbucks at the time, and I was like, it's like, this bitch deserves something, and I like got $50 out of my tips, and like...
I'm sure Shangela appreciated it.
Oh, yeah, she was like, thank you, honey.
Your bills didn't.
Oh, what bills?
Your bills did not appreciate it.
Bills that I didn't pay? Or the bill that I was sleeping with to pay my bills?
I'm just a bill.
And if you guys want to find Tiana, you can actually find her at...
Facebook at Tiana Maxim Rose. Instagram, Tiana Maxim X3. And Snapchat, Miss, how do I spell it? MISZ Maxim X3. That's where you can find me, keep up with me, look at my beautiful selfies, tell me I'm pretty.
And to all of you guys who are listening, leave a comment on her posts.
Tell me I'm pretty.
She always at least looks at them.
I respond to everything.
And we will see you guys next week. And don't forget to tune in on Friday for the after show, Second Base. Bye.
Bye.
So as I said with Tiana, I was going to originally do Julian Eltinge for my topic this week. Things have changed a little bit, and the reason why is because we actually missed a week of the podcast. So originally her podcast was supposed to air a couple of weeks before, I'm sorry, not a couple, a week before it did, and so we had to split this episode into two. And the reason why I'm not covering Julian Eltinge is because I have decided instead to cover my depression. And the reason why the podcast was missed. So, I have been going to therapy for years, 4 years at this point. And it's not typically something that I get to talk to other people about. In fact, it's not something that I often talk to myself about. I go to therapy and then I kind of... I try and take what I've learned from therapy, and then I otherwise try and keep it separate from my day-to-day life, which you should not do with therapy, by the way. If you're not fully living therapy, you're not really doing therapy. So that's something to keep in mind for anybody who is going to therapy. Really try to take everything in wholeheartedly. But one of the reasons that I'm going to therapy is actually because I have a hard time being good at something or putting my whole heart into something, just like this podcast, like everything in my life right now. And if I do do well at something or if I excel at something, I kind of, in my head, make it out to be this fluke, that it's not really happening, that I'm doing a poor job and this week just happened to work out. And that doesn't typically stop me from continuing on with my life. Most of the time, most people wouldn't even notice that I suffer from this, what is sometimes called as imposter syndrome, which is just this, I'm kind of faking my way through everything, and one day everyone's going to figure out that I'm faking it, and when I do that, I'm terrified that people are going to figure this out, right? That's kind of the gist of imposter syndrome. I don't think it's a real disease. It's just like a thing that some people suffer from, especially those creative types, which I do consider myself to be a creative type. But what ended up happening, we'll take a step back about a year, or actually about a year and a half. So I was living in California and I was doing really, really well for about 6 months when I moved out there. I moved to Long Beach, and I was making my monthly rent payments on time. I was able to fully sustain myself on food and the money that I was bringing in from being a bartender, and I wasn't drinking during the day, and I was doing yoga every day, and I had a pretty okay relationship with someone. It was never official, but we were like working it out and everything was great. And then I started to doubt myself. I started to believe that I was never really gonna be good enough. And so I'm vegan, is one thing that I don't actually think I've said on this podcast. But I was like, well, I've only been a vegan for 3 months, so I'm not a real vegan yet. And the question is then, how long do you have to be a vegan before you're a real vegan? And the same thing kind of is pervasive in the rest of my life. How long does it take to be this thing that you call yourself before you are that thing? So moving forward a little bit, I end up going to, I get offered a position at an internship. And my friends at the time tried really, really hard to put themselves out there for me. And I was again in this position where I didn't know what I was doing, and I was guessing a lot, and then I began second guessing a lot, and then I started giving up. And that is what happened a lot of the time, is that I will do something until I reach a breaking point, and then I will give up. So I gave up on the internship, and I gave up on not drinking, and then I was going to the bars every night, like literally Tuesday nights I was going out to the bar, or Thursday nights I was back on Grindr and trying to get someone to come over, and I hadn't cleaned up my room in like literally 6 months. I moved into a place in North Hollywood, and it felt like from the moment I moved in, I was not in the right place. I had made a bad decision and there was no way to turn back. And I kept living this poor decision that I had made. And instead of trying to fix it or change it, I just kind of kept riding this wave of I can't fix it. And so I lost some friends because of my inability to snap out of that. I lost a lot of friends, actually, and I lost a lot of people's respect, which I still think about a lot, probably once every other week or so. I think about these stupid decisions that I made that led to the falling out of friendships, and the loss of respect, and these things that my old friends do that I wish that I was still a part of, but I can't be, because I was in a bad place, and I never sought help, and I should have told someone that I'm lost and I kind of don't know what I'm doing and I need help. And so that was what happened essentially while I was out in California. And then fast forward to November. So I had been out there for a year, and I ran out of money, essentially. I was working at SoulCycle, but I was only working part-time. I had essentially all but given up on searching for another job. And the internship was over, mostly because I stopped going, and then also because it had actually ended. But honestly, I had spiraled so far out at that point that I don't think that anyone would have noticed. And people did, but I was telling myself that no one's going to notice if I'm not there. So there was that. I ended up moving back in with my parents, which is something that I'm not overly proud of. I came back home. I didn't work for 3 months. I kind of like wallowed in self-pity for a long time. And I wasn't receiving kind of what I needed. I needed both a kick in the ass, but also a lot of companionship and sentiment, and I didn't get that. And I don't often find that at my house with my family. And that sucks. But it's something that I have to live with and kind of move past, because at this point there is no changing that. My family is not going to suddenly change their ways. They're not going to suddenly be more supportive, or suddenly realize the things that cause problems. My family is always there for me financially, which has been really, really great. And honestly, that has been the way that we have kept ourselves together, is I have been financially supported by them, and that is always great. But emotionally, I have never really felt support from my parents, which is a huge problem. So I'm back in that house, and I am without a job, and I'm constantly surrounded by this feeling. And I'm not going to therapy. I hadn't been to therapy in almost a year at this point. And I am drinking, and I'm drinking a lot. I'm drinking a lot. And I know that it's not good for me, and so what do? I find a job, and I find a job at a winery, which was probably not the best place to apply for if you think that you have a problem with drinking. So I apply for this job, and I get it, and it's a graphic design job, and it pays $13 an hour, which is, for anyone who's listening, and you're a graphic designer, you should be getting paid more than $13 an hour, period. That is how much I got paid as a bartender. That is less than I got paid as a bartender, if you include tips. I was not making that much money, and it kind of sucked. Graphic designers need to get paid more than that, and I did not value myself enough at that point to say, no, I'm sorry, you're undervaluing me. I need more than that to survive, to sustain myself, and to move out of my house. And I'm sorry, I cannot take that job right now, because it just doesn't make sense financially. I didn't have the wherewithal to say that, and I would now, but I didn't then. So you live and you learn. So I was with them for about 8 months, and my drinking got continuously worse, because this job also allowed me to drink on the job. And so now I was drinking when I got in the morning, right around 10 o'clock. I would have just about a glass of wine, and then I would have another glass of wine during my shift, and then I would have a glass of wine at the end of my shift, and then I would take a bottle home. And this is all of the time, and I felt it like going to sleep at night and waking up in the morning. I was always tired, and it was terrible. And I decided to go back to therapy, but I was just going to therapy and not listening. I wasn't living what our sessions were about, and it meant that I wasn't listening to myself also. Therapy is not about what the therapist has to say to you, it's what your body is trying to tell you, and I was not listening, which is a real problem. So now I'm drinking. I don't like where I am at my job because I'm not getting paid enough. I don't necessarily like the attitudes at work. A lot of the attitudes at work are clashing. There is some poor management going on. It was kind of this just a big clusterfuck, and I hate using that word. So I lived through it for about 8 months, and then towards the end there, actually in June, I made the decision to stop drinking, which was a really, really good decision. And by the middle of July, I was on medication to stop drinking. I don't remember what the medication is called, but there is a TED Talk on it, so you can find that online somewhere. And I can also not necessarily vouch for that medication. I don't know that it absolutely worked on me, but it worked as a placebo, at least for the first couple of weeks. I wasn't liking where I worked, and instead of trying to find something else, I just kind of stayed there. I started going back to school at this point in time, which honestly was not the greatest decision in hindsight, but I'm glad that I did it. At this same point in time, I almost stopped showing up to work entirely during the week. So I was supposed to show up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for bartending. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I was supposed to be the graphic designer. They wouldn't pay me for full time. They wouldn't give me any of the benefits of full time. They wouldn't take me on as full time. And I'm not getting paid enough. And so I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? Get a second job? So I got a second job, and I was still not making enough money. And still at my parents' house and spending all of my time here, and it really sucked. So I'm still not really listening to my therapist, and October comes around, and it's the last week of October, and I'm kind of in this place where I haven't seen friends in a long time, and I also am feeling that my friends here don't want to see me. I know that I'm in a bad place, but I also have nothing going on, and I didn't have a car, and I was gone for a year, and I was drinking whenever I saw them. It felt like the only reason that I was seeing them was another reason to drink. And so October rolls around, we have this big party, and sure enough, I start drinking again, and I'm like, ooh, here it is, to the first drink in 3 months. And that is the beginning of the second November depression in a row. And I don't really take this one in stride. The last one lasted about 4 months. 4 months of depression. It was a lot of waking up, trying to find some sort of happiness, doing a terrible job at that, being a really, really horribly put together human being, not being there for myself or other people, and then going home, sleeping, and doing it all over again. But this November, what ended up happening was I quit my job, which was in my best interest for sure, but would have been better probably if I had lined up a second job before I did that. Or lined up a full-time job before I did that. The second job that I had, which is a ghost tour guide, which I still have, and I love that job. That job ends in mid-November, and so I was out of that job too, and so now I have no money, and I'm drinking a whole lot, and it kind of culminated at this night at the Mohegan Sun, which is a casino nearby, and I met up with some strangers, and there were some illegal substances involved in this particular night, and it did not go over well. In all honesty, looking back, the night needed to happen for me to kind of come to the realization where I have today, 6 months on. But that night was a really, really low for me. It was really bad. I didn't want to be there. I had put myself in a situation that I didn't want to be in the first place. And I knew that I shouldn't have been in, and I felt really stupid for doing it. I kept drinking throughout the month of December, but I, at this point, had told my therapist that I had actually had a breakdown and that something was wrong, and that I had been pretending that I was okay. And that is actually where I saw this big turning point. Now, remember, I was at school at the time, and I was just kind of living this mantra. I have one class, and I'm going to graduate. I just have to do this one thing, and I get to graduate. I get to do this thing that I really want to do, and I just have to do this to get it. And so even though I was depressed, and I knew that I had slipped and I was falling and it was long and it was terrible, I was still going to class. I was still doing the things, the one thing that I was telling myself that I needed to do. So I made it through that. I got an A in the class. I graduated. And I also am moving forward with this lesson that I know how I slip and I know how I fall. And if I meet a checklist, a specific checklist, then I am doing okay. And if I do not meet that checklist, I need to call my therapist right away because something is wrong. And that is essentially what happened 2 weeks ago. So I had just left the interview with Tiana, and I was kind of doubting myself in what I was doing. I was like, is this even right? Am I doing the podcast correctly? I was living in this space of, I don't know what I'm doing. I must be screwing this up, because I tell myself that I am a screw up. And so I'm telling myself constantly, this is wrong, I'm not doing it right, there's a better way to do it, other people do it better than I do, and therefore this must be bad. And I'm doing everything in my power at this point to just make it to the next day and make it to the next day. And then I'm in this job. So that's the podcast. So right off the bat, I'm like, okay, I'm bad at the podcast, right? And then I also have this new job where I'm in marketing, and I am not a marketing major. I am a graphic design major. I know how to do graphic design. I know how to manipulate pictures. I know how to manipulate lines and vectors to make them look cool. I know how to make logos. I know how to design websites. That's what I know how to do. And they are asking me to market, and I don't know how to market. I barely know how to market this podcast, which is something I'm doing in my own time. You want me to do this for work? I'm really, I don't know what I'm doing. And so that's 2 for 2. 2 things that I keep telling myself I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not asking for help. And then there's number 3, and that is that I recently got a new boyfriend. It's the first time that I'm dating someone in years, in actual years. It's been just over 3 years since the last time I dated anyone. And I keep telling myself, no matter how many times, he's so sweet to me all of the time, and it literally makes me want to cry. I'm not a very emotional person, but he is always the sweetest thing. And I'm telling myself the whole time that we're together that I am doing this wrong. I must be doing something wrong, because I haven't been able to hold a relationship for more than 3 months before. Ever. That's my longest relationship, is like 3 months. Over and over and over again. We hit the 3-month mark and that's it. And I keep telling myself, this is never going to last. Like, I really like him, which means it's not going to last. And I am in this position in all 3 places. The podcast, there are thousands of other podcasts out there. And at work, I'm surrounded by people who know what they're doing. And then with my boyfriend, I feel like he knows how to be in a relationship, and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And he has, I feel like saying he has the upper hand here is the wrong way to put it, but I feel like everyone will know what I'm talking about. He knows what he's doing, and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of Jesus take the wheeling it. And I'm scared. And so what do I do when I am scared? I said it before. I start letting things go and I start slipping. And it was about 4 days in to this depressive episode, and I realized that I was slipping because not all of my check boxes were met. So dead giveaway that something's wrong. And instead of letting it go, I decided that I needed to call my therapist, and I needed to tell my boyfriend, and I needed to tell my boss that something is wrong and that we need to fix it now before it becomes a problem. Of course, my boyfriend and my boss did the exact same thing. Are you drinking again? Also, I didn't mention this, but I stopped drinking on New Year's Eve, and I haven't had a drink since. It is now mid-April, and I'm running strong. So no alcohol in 4.5 months. 3.5 months, sorry. 4.5? Something like that. No alcohol in some time, and I'm doing pretty well on that, but they were just making sure that that was not the thing that had slipped, and no, it was not. I did not drink. I still haven't. But when I am in this weak state, I have a tendency to believe that there is an easy way out, and sometimes that's alcohol, and sometimes it's other things as well, like irrationally spending money, or wasting all of my time, or masturbating a lot. So, yeah, I let myself mentally slip, and so that also meant that the podcast suffered. I cannot commit to never letting this happen again. But what I can commit to is holding myself accountable for when things like this happen, which is the reason why you guys are hearing this right now. This is probably not the happiest thing. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know I'm a fairly cheery person. Manic depression does not look the same on everyone, but I have chosen not to take medication for this illness. And so I have to ask everyone to respect the decision that I've made, and at the same time I need to find new ways of holding myself accountable that work for me. And what I did this past time did work, and it worked fairly quickly. Like I said, that first depressive episode was 4 months, and this last one was 4 days. So we are getting to a good place. And I am happier at work, and I am so excited doing this podcast, and I feel very loved in my relationship. And so hopefully my anxieties will calm down quite a bit when I stack up reality next to my fears and say, this fear is irrational, and as a rational person, you are able to let that go. And if you are listening to this, know that you too are loved, and that I am always here. And hopefully, if you're listening to this, either because you're lonely or you just are alone, but you are not lonely, I hope that this message reaches you. And that if you need a kick in the ass, you can always give yourself a kick in the ass. You can always ask for help. You can always ask the people that are around you. You can always look to a therapist if you need one. You can always ask your friends. You may not always be able to ask your family, but you can find someone who will listen. I found out that when I reached out on Facebook for my last really major episode, people who I had not talked to in years reached out and said, hi, I too have depression. If you want to sit down and talk about it, I am more than happy to go out and get some coffee with you. I know we haven't seen each other, but that doesn't mean anything. In my mind, no time has passed. You are still loved by me. And so always reach out. It is 100% about how you view yourself. And sometimes seeing other people's perspectives can help you change that. So, I know it's a little tonally different to hear this on the podcast. The next episode is a lot cheerier. And I hope that you guys can enjoy a little bit of me taking it back down to the real world for a minute. Before listening to my very, very happy-go-lucky self talk to Miss Gay Connecticut 2018. So, I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about my problems for the last half hour. But I am going to go. You guys are awesome. Thank you for listening. And just like you're listening to me, I want you to remember there will be somebody who listens to you, okay? I feel like I've said that enough now. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. And don't forget to go find someone you love and to kiss them with consent, of course. Bye.